Hello everyone, this is a new introduction to the video here. Just wanted to let everyone know that the technical foul-up with the original version of this video was brought to my attention. Could not be fixed. There was something wrong with the footage as I filmed it, so I don't know if it was a camera glitch or what. But because it was too noticeable, I decided, okay, I'll just film a new intro explaining that there was a technical glitch in the first minute or two of this video. And fortunately, the glitch didn't affect the review itself. The content of the review itself was kept largely intact, so I didn't feel the need to reshoot the entire video. Rather, just do this intro, explain what happened and why there's some shitty editing going on here and why this is just tacked on to the start of the video. So if you've already seen the video, don't even worry about it. There's nothing new here. If you haven't seen it, I apologize for the technical glitch. It's just one of those things that happened. I didn't catch it before posting the video. So that's it. So enjoy the review. Books, and very much like my feelings on the Bounty Hunter book, I love the idea of an anthology series for the expanded universe of Star Wars. Both of these were released in the what is now known as the Legends timeline, and books like this were like a goldmine to me because they really highlighted just how rich the Star Wars universe really was. Because when you watch those original movies, and this is something that I feel was largely missing in the prequels and so far is largely missing in the sequels as well. These side characters that are only on screen for a couple of seconds, but they leave an impression. And you know, one of the characters that's featured in the Jabbas Palace book actually is the Rancor Keeper. Had one of the more memorable moments in Return of the Jedi where he cries over the fallen body of the Rancor. And it's a scene that could have easily been left on the cutting room floor. It's not essential to the story. It's not essential to the development of any of the main characters. But it's a moment that makes the universe and the world seem really rich. And I walked away from that scene, even watching it as a kid, just thinking, what's that dude's story? How did he get so attached to the Rancor? Which is answered in this book. And I think doing that type of thing with Star Wars and all of its side characters, I think is a brilliant, brilliant way to expand on the mythology and kind of answer a lot of the lingering questions we've always had about these characters for those of us when we watched those movies for the first time and all these different monsters showed up and thinking is like, well, how do they fit into the Star Wars universe? Because all we see them do is drink. And in Jabba's Palace, all we see them do is dance, sleep, and presumably commit acts of debauchery. I'm assuming that some nasty things were going on inside Jabba's Palace. Yeah, starting with the Mos Eisley Cantina, all the different stories are written by different authors. Many of them Star Wars fans who are familiar with the expanded universe will be very familiar with. Just some examples. We've got Timothy Zahn, who wrote the story for the Tanika sisters, who unfortunately that's probably the weakest story in the Cantina book, mainly because I think Zahn got stuck with the lamest characters out of all of them. It's like, wow, that's who he got stuck with? Okay. He couldn't get the Wolfman or Ponda Baba and Dr. Evassin, but anyway, we have A.C. Crispin, who wrote Figrin Dan's story, Figrin Dan being the band leader of the famous Cantina band. We got Barbara Hambly writing Night Lily, The Lover's Tale. And I gotta be honest, for those of you who remember my earlier reviews, I reviewed what is known as the Callista trilogy, and Barbara Hambly wrote two of those books, Children of the Force and Planet of Twilight. I was not kind to those books, and I think I made a comment back then. I'm not saying Barbara Hambly is a bad writer. I'm just saying that these stories just completely did not work at all for me, and I just hated them. But I'm not necessarily saying she's a bad writer. I'm just saying that these books were misfires. Proof is in the pudding that she's actually not a bad writer. I think Night Lily, The Lover's Tale might be the best story in the Cantina book. It's darkly comic. It's got a punchline that is disturbing and hilarious. It's all I'll say, it's basically chronicles the Star Wars equivalent of a one-night stand, and that's all I'm gonna say. I think it's well worth the read. I think picking this book up is totally worth it just for that one story alone, because that story is great, and I think it's probably the best one to come out of this book. Some other examples. Kevin J. Anderson wrote the tale for a Jawa character who ties into various other events going on. And there's a lot of intersection between the stories as well, as kind of got a Pulp Fiction kind of feel to it, or Trick or Treat, which I just watched the other day, directed by Michael Dougherty. That movie where it's an anthology series, but there are points where the different stories connect with each other. You get some of that here, and the Jawas Tale is one of those instances. You get the where is it? The Bartender's Tale, written by David Bischoff, who I've never read his work prior to this, but that was a very interesting one because you actually get a motivation for why the bartender doesn't want to serve droids, which I thought was really interesting. Actually, his explanation actually does make sense. He's not just a bigot. His explanation for not wanting to serve droids actually does make business sense. And you get The Tale of Dr. Evazan and Ponda Baba, written by Kenneth C. Flint. I think that's the one, for those that pick up this book, I think that's the one that people are going to gravitate to, because I think of all the Cantina characters, Ponda Baba and Dr. Evazan left the biggest impression on us as fans, mainly because one of them gets his arm chopped up and the other one gets in Luke's face and causes trouble for no reason, which, by the way, is one of my favorite Robot Chicken sketches ever, where basically the Doctor is just a dirty drunk that caused Ponda Baba to have a really bad day and basically ruined his life because he's an asshole. And you also get The Tale of the Wolfman, who the Wolfman was, when I was a kid, he was my favorite character because I was already a fan of the Universal Monster movies, so to me it was cool. It's like, hey, there's a Wolfman in Star Wars, isn't that neat? One of the things I hated about the special edition is that they took the Wolfman out, and it's like, come on, George. Why you gotta kill my fun? Why you gotta take my Wolfman away from me? What's your problem? What's your deal? And yeah, there's many other stories here, again, written by proven authors, many of whom have contributed to Star Wars before and since then. And just a wonderful selection of stories. And really, reading through it, they feel like they're right. And again, these are characters that we know very little about, and we can really only go by appearances. But based on how they're portrayed in the movies, I should say, and the way they're portrayed in these stories, they feel like believable extensions of what these characters would be if it was their own story being told, if that makes any sense at all. And if I have a complaint about the Mos Eisley Cantina series, and this is a problem that the Jabbas Palace book largely avoids, it's that it does get a little repetitive when you're reading each story one by one. Almost all of them reference the events that happened in A New Hope. So all of them have that moment where they're in the bar at the same time as Han and Ben Kenobi and Luke, and the whole situation where Ben Kenobi cuts the guy's arm off and all of that stuff. And that gets a little repetitive after a while. Like I said, Jabba's Palace largely avoids this. And I know I talked about like the pulp fiction aspect where you have all these different stories going on, but they all have points where they intersect and connect with each other. And this is, and that's fine. I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but when you already know the events from the movies, and to read them play out over and over and over and over and over again, that does get very repetitive, but it doesn't hurt that much, and it doesn't take away from each individual story, because like I said, these are just quick, fun, enjoyable reads. I found the anthology books to be very easy to read, so if you're not interested in really diving deep into the lore of the expanded universe and just reading like the New Jedi Order trilogy, or not trilogy, it's like almost 20 books. If you're not interested in reading all of that, books like this I think would be more your speed, because they're made for fans of the movies, I think, and give us nice little backstories and nice little standalone tales for all those side characters that left an impression on us. And that kind of leads me into Jabba's Palace, which I feel is better than the Cantina book and better than the Bounty Hunter book. I think of all the anthology books I've read, this one is my personal favorite so far. I have not read the stories of the Empire or the stories of the Republic, so those reviews will probably be coming in 2019, so we'll see if that stays the same after reading those entries. But again, this collection features several different authors. You got Kevin J. Anderson. You've got Barbara Hambly writing the tale of Jabba's chef, which is a very interesting one to take. Kevin J. Anderson, he wrote the tale of the Rancor Keeper. Salacious Crumb got his own story. Ula got her own story, which is quite depressing considering we all know what her ultimate fate is. That one was written by Kathy Tyers. We've got Timothy Zahn, who wrote the tale of Mara Jade. For those of you who remember, Mara Jade posed as one of, or she went undercover as one of Jabba's dancers to attack, ambush, and assassinate Luke Skywalker on the orders of the Emperor, which is her backstory. So to see that play out in this capacity was actually kind of neat, and to get that, it's a piece of her story we never really needed because I felt like it was adequately explained in the Thrawn trilogy, but to see like an account of it, I think was pretty cool. Probably one of my more favorite tales, the tale of the Gamorrean Guard, Gartog. This one was written by William F. Wu, and I guess this will lead me into why the Jabbas Palace book is superior. There's different stuff going on rather than the events of Return of the Jedi. So there's like a series of murders going on inside Jabba's palace while all this is going on with Luke and Han and all that insanity. And Gartog, the Gamorrean Guard, is one of the stories that tackles like dealing with trying to find out what exactly is going on and why there are murders going on around Jabba's palace. And he's well-meaning but dim-witted, extremely dim-witted character. And again, I don't want to spoil any of it, but I think that one is very darkly comic as well. And if you got a morbid, dark sense of humor, I highly recommend reading it because I thought it was hilarious. Like as I was reading it, it's one of my more favorite stories in this collection. And I think Gartog is just a hilarious and fun character. So I really enjoyed that one. We've also got... what are some other good ones that stood out? We got the Band's Tale, which is neat. We get Bib Fortuna's Tale, which is very interesting. This is one that kind of played against what my expectations were. So again, I don't want to spoil anything, but I think Bib Fortuna's Tale was a very interesting, very good one. One of the best, probably the best one on the set, was The Tale of Boba Fett, which details his time spent inside the Sarlacc pit, which is awesome. And it's basically Boba Fett trying to find the will to get out of it as the Sarlacc slowly saps his will away. And I won't get into the specifics of what that was like, but it was very... very intense tale, but very claustrophobic in a way because it's just Boba Fett inside the Sarlacc. But if you're a Boba Fett fan, I highly recommend checking this out. It's one of the best like Boba Fett-centric stories. It goes right up there with Last Man Standing from Tales of the Bounty Hunter. So it's nice to see Boba Fett get a big showcase and a big story, and one that's completely different from the other stuff that we've read. And one of the things, and I'll use that to highlight an example of another strength of this and how it's like they don't spend all their time intersecting all of these stories with what's going on in Return of the Jedi. They take place at different points in time. There's some intersection with the events of Return of the Jedi, but then other ones stay behind the scenes. Some of them take place after the sail barge has exploded. Some of them take place throughout the course of everything that goes on in Return of the Jedi. Some of them take place before that. And I think that, like, jumping around in the timeline and covering different events and different characters over different course over a long period, and also focusing on the whole murder things that were going on behind the scenes, I think gives this book more of a variety, and each story feels a lot more fresh than just rehashing the same scene over and over again, which the Cantina, which I guess kind of had to, given how the Cantina scene plays out in A New Hope. But going over some of the other ones, another one of the better ones, kind of a sleeper hit, was The Fat Dancer's Tale. We all remember the Fat Dancer from Jabba's Palace. And her story was written by, I want to make sure I get this right, that was A.C. Crispin, right? Yep, A.C. Crispin. So, yeah, her story was actually really, really good. And it turns out she's a bit more of a... go-getter than any of us would have expected. So, yeah, again, I don't want to go into too much detail about these books because I think a lot of them are full of nice little surprises and I think are very enjoyable. And I highly recommend checking out both of these books. If you're going to get one, I think the Jabbas Palace book is the one to go with, but both of them are definitely worth checking out, especially if you're one of the ones like me who watched those original films and thought, man, I wonder what that dude's story is. Man, I wonder what's going on behind the scenes there. I think these books do an excellent job of fleshing out these characters, making them even more interesting, and making the Star Wars universe even richer. So, yeah, whoever came up with the idea to do these quick anthology stories, I think was brilliant masterstroke. And I think these are some of the best books in the expanded universe, kind of in the same way that, like, Tales of Ba Sing Se is one of the best episodes of Avatar: The Last Airbender, or various things like that, where it's just, or the famous episode of The Simpsons 22 short films about Springfield, where it's just all these different individual stories happening at once with some intersections, but just showing what the characters are like when a major story is not taking place or when the Simpsons aren't around. Things like that. And I think these books both do a very good job of giving the fans what they would want out of these type of stories. And again, and to recommend it again, the Bounty Hunter, Tales of the Bounty Hunters also does that very, very well. And I also think that one's worth checking out. So I've got 2 more Tales of books to cover, but The Empire and the New Republic. We'll see how those go. I look forward to actually reading those. Hopefully I haven't read the best ones and then the later 2 are crap. But yeah, if you're interested in those side characters in the original Star Wars trilogy, I don't think you could do any better than picking up those 2 books. I think they're definitely worth checking out. So that concludes this review. Thank you all for watching. Once again, happy Halloween. Enjoy your night. Be safe, and don't drink too much, or if you are going to drink too much, make sure you Uber or get a ride home. And that is all I have for you right now. So peace out, everybody, and I will see you later.